Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome again. This is our third in our series. I'm Ranak Trivedi. I'm a clinical psychologist and a health psychologist, and I'm an associate professor here at Stanford University. And we're doing this program in partnership with the CWC, also supported by SUCCM, Stanford Presence, and Stanford Center for Asian Health Research and Education. The way we started this program is, this is something I'm deeply interested in. I'm a clinical health psychologist, and I've worked almost 20 years trying to understand how we can better support people who have chronic and serious health conditions and their family caregivers in all kinds of different health conditions: heart failure, COPD, end-stage renal disease, and cancer. As it turns out, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer a long time ago, and she had metastatic cancer for about 19 years. She passed away in 2024. And that experience has brought me back to my roots to understand how I can bring my expertise and my experiences into the space. So we did a project a couple of years ago to understand what is it that we're missing, because we know a lot of South Asians obviously have cancer, and we know there's a cultural context in which that happens. There's stigmas, there's taboos, and so we wanted to understand that better. So we talked with a bunch of people like you, survivors, caregivers, and some of the things we learned is that, of course, cancer is really stressful. That's not a huge surprise. But people also experience a lot of isolation and loneliness, and they don't know who else has cancer because people don't talk about it. And so we asked people, what would help? What could we be doing? So we're building a program to specifically help people, different targets like stress, social isolation, loneliness. And through initiatives like this, we want to create a space so that people can connect also just informally, even if it's not specific to a research project. So that's how we started thinking about this series. So with that, thank you for being here. And what I'll have each of our panelists do is introduce themselves, and I'll turn it over to you, Purna.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ranak. So I'm Purna Pareek. I'm a entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur. I've, from a career perspective, I've done quite a few companies and exited out of all of them now, and I'm more or less retired at this point. So this is my second career, to write about my cancer journey and help people and inspire people in any which way I can. So that's my brief introduction. We can talk about anything beyond that about journey. You want me to start with that? Or?
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay. So okay. With that introduction, I'll tell you. The reason I'm here is because about 7 years ago, almost this May 20th, I believe, is going to be my seventh anniversary, so to speak, or my 7th birthday, if you want to call it, which I call a birthday because a rejuvenation and recreation of a new human being. After cancer, especially with what I went through, was a stage 4 glioblastoma, which is a brain cancer, and survival rate for the brain cancer is about, less than 5% generally, and they give you about 6 to 12 months, which is what I got. So here I was running a company, in full swing in my life, and exciting life, and a lot of stuff happening, and then all of a sudden, I found this, 4 centimeter or 6 centimeter, big tumor in my occipital lobe right here, which was impairing my vision, and that's how I found out that the vision was being impaired. I used to play, table tennis and all that stuff. So, and I couldn't see the ball coming in, hitting me, and I said, "Oh, what happened? Where's the ball?" So anyway, the long story short, went through a lot of eye exams and all that. They say, "Yeah, eyes just fine. Physically, there's nothing wrong with it." So fine, you got to, talk to a, neurology. And I said, "Oh, neurology. Okay, something wrong with the brain." You say, "Yeah, maybe." We got the MRI done, and it was a big shock. Saying, "Okay, you got a big brain tumor in your head, and you got to figure it out." So now we're running, and my wife, she's right here actually. She running around Stanford and UCSF and Mayo Clinic or Cleveland Clinic or wherever we could find the best possible doctor. Anyway, we finally ended up with the UCSF because we found that is one of the best in terms of brain cancer. Surgeon was fantastic. So we decided to go there and get it done. The tumor was taken out, pretty successful surgery. So that was good. And then, of course, you go the healing period and all that stuff. So then you go through radiation and chemotherapy and all that stuff. So, so meanwhile, while all these treatments are going on, we're obviously wondering about what's going to happen, because we know the prognosis is very, dismal, and it's going to be about, 6 months or 12 months. Even despite the fact that you got, tumors was resected or taken out, you have these massive chemo pills, and you have to continuously take it pretty much most of your lifetime. And then you have radiation on top of it. So you're lying on your table here, and this X-ray that is zapping your brain from left side to right side, and obviously it's zapping everything in between. So I said, oh my God, I'm just dying, looks like, right here, because it's going through my brain continuously, and I'll be a vegetable. So, and then at nighttime you take these chemo pills, which are brutal, because you can't sleep. You can't do anything, it's just like going to the bathroom all the time. Anyway, very long, terrible story. But then that's when I decided that, hey, what kind of life do I want to live? So do I want to live, like a miserable on chemotherapy, or do I want a longevity or quality of life? So that's a trade-off that, I had to make. And obviously, family was involved pretty heavily. My wife and I have 2 children who are grown up, and so once they found out that I have a diagnosis, we came home and cried all together and sang the song, and and then say, okay, what do you want to do now, right? So, and when I decided that I'm not going to go through this chemotherapy and all this journey, I think everyone's ballistic. They say, oh, what do you mean? You're not going to do all this stuff? You're going to die. I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. I'm okay with it. You guys are okay with it? Well, they were not sure, but that's the decision I made. That was the turning point in my life, that I said, I'm not going to do this, because, and let me see if I can find some alternative means, alternative way to figure this thing out. So that's when my journey began, so to speak, and I started, investigating into different research, and and Anu is fantastic. She's my Google search engine. So she did all the medical research and looked at all the white papers and clinics and clinical trials, but nothing was, really there. There's no cure for brain cancer even today, after 7 years. So the only thing you do is mitigate the problem. You suppress the symptoms and you live. And I wasn't sure I wanted to live like that, right? So that's when, after doing a lot of research, I found out, what can be done, and holistic medicine, which is pretty much everybody knows, right? You take care of your body properly and eat properly and sleep properly and all that good stuff, right? And I've written a book on it. So those who are interested deeply in that thing, you can read the whole book. So I decided to follow that method, and I learned that meditation is one of the big things, diet, METS framework that I developed, which is METS, meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. Those are the 4 pillars of the stool that keeps us stable. So I started doing meditation. I tried all kinds of meditation from Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is kind of one of my teachers that I follow now. But Deepak Chopra and Indian meditation and Buddhist style and Vipassana, and tried everything. And I was sucking up everything from YouTube that I could learn about other things, the diet and keto diet, and I went on keto diet, and she was wonderful in that she took care of a lot of those things, and then exercise. So I've been going to gym all along. I was a pretty healthy male, before this diagnosis. So I was going to gym before also. So it was not like something new, but I continued doing that despite the diagnosis. And then sleep was a big factor. I realized it, because if you don't sleep well, the nighttime, the rejuvenation, renewal, and recovery doesn't take place, because that's when the cells actually, biology kicks in and actually cleans up your system and rejuvenates your system. So that was important. So these are the 4 factors that I discovered, and so I went through the whole thing, and it started to improve. And my oncologists were not very happy, but she was very supportive. She said, "Yeah, okay, that's what you want to do. That's fine, but the stats here, right?
And here you are.
So here you are. So you can decide." And so we had conversation with the family. And I said, "Listen, I'll die in 6 months, 12 months." But to make things even more interesting, I was diagnosed in May, and my daughter was going to get married in September. So I said, oh, I got 6 months, good. My daughter will be married, then I'll be gone. I'm good with that. So we went through all kinds of interesting conversations with the family. Now we are fortunate enough to be where we were in our life, where kids were grown up and they mature enough, and I had financially we were okay, and my wife was okay. She said, oh, we had a few conversations about the death and all that stuff. There was actually quite a few. Which was very interesting.
Do you mind if we just have them introduce as well?
Yeah.
Because you've touched on a lot of things. I definitely want us to talk about your communication with your wife and the healthcare, but I want to make sure that Rita and Katie also get a chance to introduce themselves so that we can all have a conversation. Sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, that's fine. That's perfectly
Thank
okay.
you
Sorry.
so much.
Sorry,
no, you're fine. No, your story is so compelling, and I know everybody would love to hear that. So hold that thought.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I'm
Rita, yes, we'll be here for a while. So Rita, if you don't mind introducing yourself, and then Katie as well.
Sure. So. It's such a pleasure to be here, and especially my journey with Ranak is for many years. I just want to first of all say that I am so I don't even know, speechless with your journey, because when I hear that, I hear the compelling, the wisdom and the strength. So my journey, I'll be brief. I came to Stanford because of my parents. My father had Parkinson's and mother had similar issues. Mother-in-law had breast cancer. So I was, in many ways very privileged to be the founder of the aging program at Stanford after my postdoc work there. And that continued for almost 2 decades. And what we ended up doing is we did not have those kind of resources as you have today, which is, I look around the room and I see these amazing women who started so many chapters. But what we wanted to do, which was sort of the outcome of the father of geriatrics, if you call it, Dr. Robert Butler, who started the Center of Longevity in New York, he was my guide counselor, is this continuum of care model, which is, what is that? That is true wellness. And of course, when you look at wellness, everything that Purna, you said, everything that he said supports heart health, brain health, body health, the 4 pillars. But then you look at wellness, and then you look at illness, diagnosis, the associated problems, and then you move on to, the recovery, hospitals, skilled nursing facilities. So that's where my journey took, and that's what our program does. And navigation is a huge part of it. Cancer becomes a huge part, but also you have to realize that we have so much of incidence now, Ranak, because of the awareness and the diagnosis, but it does affect, I would say, majority are older adults, which is 60 plus. So you have the geriatric syndromes, comorbidities associated with that. So it's a complex journey, how to support the caregiver, how to be there at every stage. I think that's what my work and experience has been, and I'll pause to let you go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Rita. Katie, please, close us out.
Awesome. First off, Ranak, great forum. When Ranak suggested the idea of participating in this, I said, on the theme itself, I think this is most important. We all understand, given our cultural background, how important the communication aspect is. Purna, you're traversing the journey. You've seen it through your family, and you see it through people that you help navigate that journey. Even I went through it. So for all of us here, there is some, Siddharth Mukherjee said it very well, it is the emperor of all maladies. And when we heard it walk into our house here in Palo Alto, because our family, my wife and I, we both had parents that we lost to cancer. I lost my mother, she lost her mother too to cancer. When it came into our house, it's funny, that news was broken to me. I had just shut down a startup, and I was exploring what to do next, and I was interviewing for a job. And I go for a dinner meeting, and I'm closing out on the job, talking to the execs, this, that, and the other. And my wife, I come home, she hadn't told me anything. So I come in the evening, she says, oh, how are you? How was your meeting? This, that. And she said, okay, I have something to tell you. Do you want to sit down? And I'd had 2 glasses of wine. I sit down, and it's about 8 p.m. or so. She said, I got my biopsy report and I have cancer. I remember her expression. I can almost remember what my expression was. I was aghast. And for me, I can endure personal pain very easily. I have very high threshold for pain, but I cannot see anybody else in pain. It's just psychological. I cringe at the sight of blood from someone else. Not that I run away, but it's just, it's fear comes to me. So I was literally shocked. And, her reaction was, she said, I'm going to fight it. And we will have a motto in our house. And, it was very simple. Fuck cancer. It was just that. She said, I'm going to fight. I'm going to come out good. And, that's when we started that journey. Everything else unfolded from there. This is 3 years ago to the month. It was April 2023 when she got her diagnosis. So from my personal background, I'm a tech executive. I now dabble a lot with AI. The two areas where I feel AI can make a big impact are in, of course, healthcare and in the energy sector. So, I wanted to do something with either of the two. Luckily, I've got now the opportunity to work in the energy sector, not in healthcare. So if this one works out, then the next gig that I'll do is probably going to be in healthcare and bring AI there. But I'm happy to share our journey and my personal journey as a caregiver. Totally empathize with those who are caregivers and fully, respect the courage of the fighters who really fuck cancer.
Thank you. And each of you is bringing such a unique perspective, and so this makes for such a rich conversation. So thank you for your sharing your stories and how you're touching. Maybe Rita, I'll have you, since we've heard these stories, you've approached this as a researcher, as a clinician. Obviously, you have your lived experience. I wonder if you can comment on what you've seen when people around communication. So today's topic is obviously navigating communication. So maybe have you start off, and then we'll have Katie and Purna weigh in as well from their perspective. What do you see culturally happening when people are talking of cancer? What do you think what are some tips and strategies that people are thinking about when they hear cancer in your work?
So I think, Ranak, that's a great point, because when you talk about communication, there is, of course, the family communication, which is between the primary caregiver and the patient. And I think where I find that we still have a lot of work to do is the health system. So, for example, and I can tell you, like I have, I left Stanford after 24 years and I'm still continuing in my own private practice. I would say majority of my patients have cancer as one of the diagnoses, along with Parkinson's and dementia and high blood pressure and kidney disease. So that is there. And I feel that the way you handle the diagnostic piece, because I find families scrambling, second opinion, third opinion, what do I do, where do I go? So if there was a little bit more clarity, and I feel we have so much at our disposal. I mean, you talk about AI, you talk about so many portals at our fingertips, that if there was a way that when you choose the health system, wherever, UCSF, Stanford, clinic, whatever, if there was a way that we could just sit down calmly and talk about what is to come. And I found that very helpful in my practice, that if a patient comes, of course they go to the oncologist. I think communication with your primary care doctor becomes very important, because you don't want to lose sight of everything else that's happening. Mm-hmm. And then the family meeting, something that we have published on, is just getting the primary caregiver, in which case if it is the spouse or the daughter. Ranak, in my experience, usually, when I deal with the gender female patients, women, they don't speak up a lot. They don't want to impose on people, so it's pretty lonely for them. For men, it's a little different. The family rallies around a little bit more. In terms of the South Asian, I do have a lot of patients also. They feel that it's happened? What do I do? Do I accept? Do I not do? So there are so many, I mean, I could sit here and talk for hours on end, but I think if we could come together in one balanced meeting to say, this is what's going to happen, this is going to be my resource, when I have a problem, who do I call? You know, just putting it all on the map. But I feel the family meeting or the initial meetings, Ranak, are so important because I'll tell you why. I was at a meeting this morning, and I'll just take 10 seconds to explain. 55-year-old patient who has now breast cancer. Mother is my patient who has Parkinson's. And she said, I just need to know who is going to be there for me. You know, if it's my spouse, if it's my daughter, I want the communication to be clean. I want it to be not an imposition. So tell me ahead of time. If you can't do it, it's okay. I will find other people, but I just need to have that because I can't live with this guilt, you know, I'm imposing on people. So, you know what I'm talking about, these, and then it leads into clinical things like symptom management and insurance and, you know, like you had mentioned the other day about the coal capping, where do we go? So I feel the health system can do a lot. And by the way, before I end, we now have a code for actually working with the primary caregiver, which we never had before, a billing code. We never had that before. Wow. So it's huge, it's huge.
Caregiver, yeah, the CTS codes, yeah. So caregiver training service codes. So, and it's both telehealth as well as in person, because they've extended, CMS started, and then they've extended it out, so.
We worked for ages on that.
I know, this has been, this is huge advocacy. So for both Purna and Katie, maybe starting with you, Purna, both of you kind of alluded to sharing the news with your family. Can you say a little bit about what was that like? You know, what are some what decisions were you making? Whether was your wife there, or that when you were sharing with your children or extended family, how did you navigate all that?
So for me, I mean, my wife was there all along because, you know, we went through surgery and everything else. And when news came in, and she was there all along. So I think it was kind of, you know, she was in the loop all the time. Kids did not know because they live in San Francisco and we live in Fremont. So it's kind of, you know, and we visit once in a week or whatever. So once we found out, I wasn't 100% sure that I want to share with them because I personally felt that if you share some time, and I mean, this is my personal philosophy that may not necessarily be good for everybody, is that I share with people only if they can help me or they can be helped in some ways. Otherwise, if I'm sharing a bad news with them, it's basically creating a frustration in their life and they cannot do a whole lot about it. So I hold back as much as possible. Now, kids were different, and, you know, and my wife insisted that we need to share with the kids. You know, you don't have to share with anybody else, and we didn't for a very long time, except one friend who was in a biology field, so we wanted to get his feedback. So anyway, we shared with the kids, and they came from San Francisco down to Fremont, and we kind of told them, and we hugged and cried, and you know, I say, hey, this is what it is, and then we say, okay, now we're done with all this stuff. I mean, not really that, I'm just putting it too cold here, but it was a very emotional moment, obviously. And then we decided that this is what it is, and let's accept the reality of life. So first thing is, what is real? The reality is that I could be here for 6 months. My daughter was going to get married, so we said, let's plan for that and make sure that happens. And, you know, to top it off, to make things even more interesting, I was going through a acquisition deal. In the process of negotiating a deal with my, you know, with the company who was going to acquire my company. So with all these three things going on, and I got 6 months, I was just running like a crazy person to make these things happen, because I said, I accept that I'm going to be gone. But then in that process, let me make sure that all loose ends are taken care of, and nobody should, you know, be suffering. And so we went through the whole thing, and I mean, I'm making a little bit longer story here. All the financial accounts, password, I know, here it is. Just, you know, make sure you have everything, you know. So we went through the whole process, and then we say, okay, now let's focus our energies on what to do next. Okay, so emergencies, and take care of all these things, and focus on the next thing, which is let's, you know, go through surgery and find the right doctors, and, you know. And then just we went through the whole process. So sharing was there, but we didn't share with anybody else, extended family in India or here, even my nephews and cousins, they're all here, but we didn't share with anybody else. Even my daughter's in-laws family, we didn't share with them because the wedding is going to take place in about, I think 3, 4 months, 5 months after surgery. And the brain, what happens to brain surgery, they actually take your skull apart completely, right? And it's like a two halves, right? And then, do whatever they do and cut the knife. It's a carpentry system, basically, right? They take it out and then put it back and put the stitches on, which means now I have stitches on my head. So it's like you cannot hide it. Doesn't matter what you do. So I had to put cap on, and I explained to people, oh well, and I had to tell my people at work that, hey, what's going on? Because I was the CEO, founder, and I say something is not right here. The guy is wearing a cap. Anyway, that's a long story. But to make it short, it was a lot of navigating through the whole thing, shared with only the people who have need to know basis, as we say in the business world, and not go out and tell everybody else. The 2 reasons. One is that I believe if they cannot help me, then there's no point. I'm only going to add burden in their life. Number 2 is that I don't want people to call me and tell me and sympathize every time, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you have cancer, oh, pity you. And now I'm feeling victim and miserable, and I'm trying to feel good, but the body says, no, you're miserable. So it was so to avoid all that stuff, is best is to share with only the people who actually you need to share with. That's my viewpoint. But that doesn't necessarily apply. It depends on your emotional constitution, right? How you're built. If you're built differently and you like to share, and majority of the people do, by all means go for it. But I am a different, built. So don't necessarily take my advice.
Yeah, thank you. And Kitty, I see you kind of nodding, and this sort of seemed like it resonated.
Totally.
How did you all navigate who to talk to? And I'm curious also, as kind of picking up this from things we've heard from our study, is did stigma play any, or not you or your stigma, but how society would view you, the community, did that play a role? So if you can speak to that a bit.
Yeah, I think yes. And perhaps that's the reason, what Purna said about need to know, and do I need to tell everybody, do I need to tell the kids? Same thing. Maybe it's a copy paste in our genetics that runs through. But yes, that was my mindset. And my wife also felt the same way. But at that time, our older son was at home and our younger one was in college. And the doctors said that we need to get your chemo started in 10 days because you're at the stage where if you go past this, then you're progressing. So right now you classify as early, then you get rapid, and yours is aggressive. So move. So okay. And the date they gave us was a few days after Mother's Day, the weekend of Mother's Day, and then that week they said Friday we'll do the first session. Okay, so which means it was a trigger. So we told the older one, and I was amazed. So first off, I was amazed with my wife, the way she communicated. My sense, having been married to her that year for 26 years, 26, was that, how will she take it? Does she have the strength? Because, if somebody is sneezing there, so she's probably catching a cold there. She's that type. So I always tease her, you're a hypochondriac. And I get a lot of grief for saying that. So I was, amazed at her reaction when she said, I'm going to fight it, I'm going to come out winner. And then I saw a trickle of a couple tears also, of course. I don't think I was crying, but, the way our older son absorbed the news was amazing. He said, Mom, you're going to be all right. I'm very sure, okay? And so then we told him, so this gets to the communication aspect first within hours of finding out. He says, you got to tell the younger one also. And we said that, look, his exams are starting 2 weeks from now. Let's not derail him from that.
Yeah.
But then we realized, this gets to the whole stigma part. We realized if chemo starts, he's going to see his mother look very different. So that's a giveaway, because what is it when we see anybody? You go to the farmer's market, you see some person wearing a cap and also a mask, and if it's this weather and they are wearing woolen because chemo
Yeah.
makes you
Hard.
feel cold. So it's a stigma. You're walking that pity feeling. No patient wants that pity. I think no human wants pity. That's why a lot of parents will say that, no, I'm okay. I'll get up on my own. I see my dad say that. He's 89. Says, no, don't have to touch me. I got it. So, that pity thing is there. Nobody wants to be in pity city. And the second was, we were holding back communication, we decided. But the older one said, no, this is not right. You guys do this always, you don't tell us things, you should be more upfront. He's a big guy, he's 19 or 18 at that time, you gotta tell him. But for us, the forcing function was chemo starting, he's home for Mother's Day. And the hardest part was, how do we break it? Oh, that night we didn't sleep. My eyes still swell up when I recount that whole thing. That night, my wife and I are discussing how we're going to tell him. So we called the older one. The younger one is home. He's hanging out with his friends. When we broke the news to him, this is the night right before Mother's Day. Mother's Day happens on a Sunday, right? Yeah, so that Saturday night, he comes home. We said that we can't delay this anymore. We have to tell him because next morning he's going. So we sit him down, say, okay, here's what's going on. And this kid, so we are sitting like this, like you're sitting across from me, so just about the same distance. My wife and I are sitting like this. So she did the talking. I would chime in because it was her news. She had all the details. I was still learning a lot of the details. She's communicating. That kid, his head is down, he's nodding, absorbing. I think about 25 minutes my wife must have explained the whole situation. He had his phone in hand and he heard her. He says, okay, Mom, you're going to be all right. And then he was quiet for a while. We didn't, it was like pregnant silence in a room. He did something on his phone, did some research. He says, Mom, question 1, 2, 3. So 3 questions he asked her, got his answers. He says, Mom, you're going to be totally fine. What are we doing tomorrow to celebrate Mother's Day?
Wow.
We were
Amazing.
shocked. Both of us were shocked. We thought he's the softie of the family. He's going to be sobbing and, how will he take it? Oh, that kid, he says, no, Mom, this is totally done. What do you want me to do? Dad, how can I help? And that changed, in my mind, like the need to know.
Yeah.
When you were saying this, I was laughing to myself and, imagining my older son, hey, Dad told you, right? You guys, he always says, you guys, you grew up in India, so you have this whole notion of keeping it close to you. So that was like a forcing function to change that mentality, need to know. Sometimes it's okay to share, at least within the family. And
Especially with the kids, when they're grown-up kids, yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
So more so because they are, sometimes we forget they're not kids. They are our kids, but they're
adults,
no more
yeah.
kids.
Yeah, that's true.
But that also builds the whole resilience factor.
Totally.
I mean, that conversation is so powerful.
Yeah.
It just opens up that whole kind of
Connection,
proactive, let's move forward, we have a plan, that is so amazing to hear.
I'm just so moved when you just shared that story. Like I could feel like I was pulling at me too. And it's similar when my mom found out she had breast cancer. I was at OA doing my PhD program. It was my second semester. And they found out the Sunday night, because, we're Indian, so like every specialty doctor is a friend of ours, right? So, so the person who was who had just asked for her to biopsy, they called a radiology friend who then came home and told my parents, but they didn't tell me until the next day when I would be at school, so that I wouldn't be by myself in my apartment overnight. They want, so it just took me back to that when I remember when they called me when I was in my office. Yeah. So, and it's just so moving, and there's that other layer of communication. There's a need to know because you get pity, but also you're protecting. So who are we protecting when we are withholding the communication? And then they surprise us, right? There are people who we decided to share with or not decide to share with, and then they surprise you because they lean in and they become our strong support. I wonder if you see, Rita, we just coincidentally happen to have a caregiver and a survivor who are both men. Are there gendered aspects to this kind of keep withholding information or deciding to share and all that? Do you see that in our community?
So I was just thinking about that, Ranak, when you had asked that,
Yeah.
you said that. If I look at just the patient profiles and if you look at research, I would say that culture, of course, plays a huge part of it. I think the South Asian culture, especially if we come from it, I have a mother and a mother-in-law who, again, she did not even go for a mammogram because she just chose not to, and when we discovered it was aggressive, fourth stage already. But coming back to what you said, I think women tend to take it in a different way. They will not share too much because of the burden piece, and which is why it is hard. And I feel that if they could be motivated to do more, probably share more, reach out more, it would be a different story because they would see the resilience around. But I have many patients, Ranak, not only older adults, but also younger women that we've seen in the clinic and the other places have said that, this is my journey. I would like to sort of keep it to my journey. I don't want to disturb my son who's doing this, my daughter-in-law who's doing that, or my children who are studying. And it is sort of more of an emphasis from the clinician's perspective to say, no, you need to involve them. And whether it is the tool that one of the ladies today was talking about, the care coordination tools you have, or getting on the same page to who does what, but it is also important for them to know that you're not alone in this. So you have to move forward, and I feel that, Ranak, I've seen a lot where the gender does come in, whereas if it's a male, then there is a lot more kind of gathering around that cancer. And I see that actually with another disease which I'm working, which I specialize in, is in Parkinson's disease. A lot of that.
Yeah.
Huge gender and cultural difference in that also.
Both in terms of what they communicate and what they receive, it sounds like.
Not only what they communicate, what they receive, the anticipation. Because if you look at, the cognitive disorders of Parkinson's and dementia, that's also like a kind of a really irreversible situation. Cancer, at least we are getting there. We are reversing it, but not for the others. So there is that stigma, there is that impact. But I feel that because so much is out there right now, medicine is changing. If there is that feeling of resilience and moving forward, and we can do it holding hands. So I think that's one of the things that I work a lot, Ranak, and I do home visits, mainly to kind of gather that resource and that strength to say, no, you're not alone. You need to share. And of course, share meaningfully, not share randomly, but meaningfully, and including family. So that's where I feel, that's my perspective.
And if you're interested in helping us build a program like that, we have flyers here and we have more information, Rita knows. So that's the type of program we're trying to build, is to create a space where people can share but also learn skills. I want to switch to another part of the communication which comes up a lot and is on people's minds, is communicating with the healthcare team and advocating for yourself, for your loved one, and you've worked with this space. Can maybe keeping with you, Rita, if you want to kick us off, what are some tips and strategies that cancer survivors, patients, caregivers should be thinking about to make sure they are heard by the healthcare team, especially because we know that caregivers especially feel very sidelined in these communications. They don't feel engaged even though they're bringing so much to the table. So
I get into the nitty-gritty of, say, symptom management. Somebody is going through cancer treatment, and then what happens with the symptoms? Are they able to get through the doctor right away? Are they able to get an answer back? What do we do? What not to do? So those details become, because, we are in the clinic-based space where you make a call, it doesn't get answered right away. Whereas I feel that the navigation piece becomes important, very important to have your caregiver, whoever it is, Ranak, by your side to say, no, this is not something that we can avoid. So advocating for yourself to say, I need, to be heard. So on my health, I kind of get most of my caregivers are on my health with the patient, even though both of them are doing it, because that's a quicker way to get through the provider, whether they need some physical aspects or, And one common I feel, Ranak, which you actually mentioned, is the sensitivity to other issues that happen, the weaknesses that happen. And again, pushing forward, making sure that the health system is hearing you. I don't advocate going into urgent care again because of the exposure, but sometimes that is important, or even being able to message somebody. So to me, because I spend a lot of time in the emergency room and in the hospital system, this becomes a very important part as to how to get that help. And I feel wherever I can, Ranak, I tell people that when you do have those initial conversations with the doctor, just say, I know this is going to happen. I know X, Y, and Z is going to happen. Who's going to be there for me? Who do I call? What number do I reach? Those become very important conversations before, so they know that you're serious, because I have seen some really hard situations where we've had to really step in because the patient is alone, not able to get hear results and all that.
Katie, when you're thinking, when I'm wondering as a caregiver whose wife is going through breast cancer, management, treatment, all that, how did you navigate your role in that paradigm as you were connecting with the clinical care team? And are there some learnings and insights from that people might benefit from?
I think, I learned a lot. First off, we were advised by the Stanford team that don't think that Google is the university for information. So there is a lot of wrong information. Ask us, we'll help. Of course, people still search, I would do it consciously to be informed. My wife, I think she was more careful. I think she was smarter on how she went about it. She's generally skeptical. She uses her browser in private mode most times. So, she wasn't doing it. But we were very fortunate that the one person who knew even before I knew is one of our very close friends. They are neighbors also. So so my wife and she were probably sitting together when she got the call. And, or the doctor said, her PCP said that I'm going to call you with your result from the biopsy. So my wife figured. So she called that friend, because that friend had suggested, you need to, if your biopsy is not getting scheduled, say this and they'll schedule it instantly, because she knows the healthcare system. She knows that system. She works in the industry, not as a practitioner, but she works in the ecosystem. So she was right there. So from that day onward, she became like the plus one in guiding through how to work through the doctors here. Because, for us, we were going through this very different system. We come from a culture, been in this country almost 30 years, we still culturally are tuned to respect the teacher, respect the doctor. But, guess what? This country, the systems are different. You got to work with the systems the way they are. You got to ask questions. So for our first few visits with the oncology and the surgery team, because they make you go through the whole shebang, radiation, oncology, everything, she would accompany us. She said, I'll come with you. And it was not that she said, I'll come with you. My wife said, could you join us? She said, okay, sure, I'll come. Are you sure you want me to come? She asked me. I said, of course. I don't know much about this. So yes, we will. Please do join us. That was very helpful. To have someone who's in the room to ask that follow-on question, because, first 24 hours, I draw concentric circles, as I'm listening to our conversation, of timeline and how we how more people got into the know what's going on, and how in that circle of those, each concentric circle, who started falling in there, and those relationships, I remember every name, everything they did, can never forget. So grateful for it, right? But that is what, we learned, that in that concentric circle, she came in first to guide us through what are the questions to ask. We learned so much. And, we came out and said, oh, that's a gotcha. Why didn't we ask that? So she said, okay, just send a message. We learned that thing of probing through that experience. So having somebody was very helpful. Another thing that we discovered, and it's, like Monica, you and I were talking, the community, somebody who's been through it will suddenly call, hey, I heard from that other friend, how can I help? It is so natural. The survivor community is so strong that they just motivate you. They help you fight. I tell you, hats off to the to the ones who are literally fucking cancer. So yeah, that community helps everybody, and they give you the guidance on navigating. And there's nothing like speaking from personal experience, and because there's that whole first person response you get from all elements, caregiver to caregiver also. There is caregiver coaching that I got from some friends. But yeah,
Yeah.
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but Purna, from your perspective, what are some sort of ways in which you all navigated talking with the clinical care team, or in your case, teams, because you were you were starting to tell a story about the other cancer as well. Are there ways in which, are there some insights or strategies that you would share with the community so that would help them navigate that better?
Yeah, sure. So in my case, the brain cancer, there's a community. I went to UCSF, so
Right.
UCSF got all kinds of availability of resources and websites and everything else. So obviously scoured the websites and Google and YouTube and all that stuff. But I think we did not go to any one of those because San Francisco is just too far to go and communicate with people who in the hospital community. It was very difficult. And I just felt that I'm fairly independent, and both of us are. So we did not really take advantage of those opportunities that was available to us because we felt self-sufficient. Plus my oncologist she was very nice. She pretty much supported everything, and I think I expressed my opinion that I'm not much into the strong medication model. I mean, I have to go through this whole thing, and we talked about all that, the chemotherapies and all the complex drugs. And actually, I take it back. Actually, we did before that. I had a close friend, actually one of my former co-founder. His wife also had the GBM. So we had one example right there who we knew who was going through it. At that time, she was alive actually. She passed away after a couple of years, 3 years. But so she went through a lot of stuff. A lot of doctors, and we went to Southern California because she recommended this surgeon who was really, really good and doing research. And they said you go to Mexico, and because we cannot give you that drug, you have to go outside the country. All those things we explored, all kinds of options, and some concoction of different drugs, the metformin and all that stuff, complex. So, but there's no guarantee of any of those things. Sure. So, after learning all these things, this is my personal case again, and may not necessarily be applicable to most people. Against my wife's wishes, I discarded all that stuff. And I said, I'm not going to do all this stuff because it's going to kill me anyway. Again, very personal, and I don't recommend people follow this advice, but that's what I did. So, I did talk to oncologists, and I told her, this is what I'm going to do. And she said, you know your statistics, so if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Let's monitor it and do MRI every 6 months. And we kept doing that, and every time I went to MRI, it came out clean. So I said, okay, keep doing it. She said, well, we got to do it every 3 months. I said, how about 6 months? I've kind of negotiated with her, but 9 months, 1 year. So, but she was nice enough to never complain too much. So monitoring was there, and it was good, so it worked out well. But in general, going back to your question, I would say we didn't take advantage of many resources that were available to us. We knew it was available, but we didn't. But yeah, it's a great opportunity because, and again, it depends on the personality, right? I'm a fairly independent, entrepreneur kind of person. I do my research, do my stuff. So, like, okay, been there, done that, so I can deal with it. I don't recommend this attitude. That's just a cowboy kind of model. Not a good idea. But if community resources are available, absolutely, go for it.
And both of you have alluded to this, so just to kind of pull that thread out too, is you finding somebody who had gone through a similar experience, whether it's a survivor or somebody who's had glioblastoma or a caregiver, that alone can be just a very powerful way to help navigate that, because we don't know what we don't know. So then you don't know what questions to even ask. So that maybe is one helpful tip too, is that, and which is why it's hard in our community, because we don't know who's gone through it. So the more of us who make ourselves available and share that this is something that I've gone through as a caregiver, as a survivor, people can reach out to me, I can help. I think that can be really powerful, because I think that community communication, it all has the same root of word, right? Etymological root. So we want to make sure that we have somebody that we can ask to say, what question should I even ask? Just kind of, and sometimes, like you're saying, the time frame of action is very short. Sometimes it's even shorter. You had 10 days, and you said it was right after Mother's Day, and that was just so moving to hear about, and just actually I got chills when you said that. And sometimes the time frame is like you have 24 hours, and like, or we're admitting you right now. So sometimes there's just not a lot of time to even process the hugeness of this.
So one thing I was going to say,
yes, please.
that when we were going through this whole thing, and this, my friend's wife, she went through the whole thing. So we kind of saw her going through the pain and suffering and misery, and she was beginning to lose the voice, and finally the mechanical movements in the body. So we saw the progression. It was very scary. I said, this is what the journey looks like. And that made me even more convinced that, this ain't the path for me, or for everybody else. Plus a whole bunch of other stuff that you had to do, like you put a cap on it 18 hours a day with electrical impulses going in your brain, and only you can take it off in your sleep time. I said, oh my God, this is like, so it was a little unique case for me, or different case, pretty severe, and life-threatening to the point that it was almost guaranteed that you're going to die. So I said, okay, if I'm going to die, then I'm going to might as well take a different path. So I would say it was a little bit unique case, and GBM is pretty much all of them. I would say if there's a GBM case, I would say, yeah, let's talk about it. But other cancers are treatable. It's a different story altogether. So take my words with a grain of salt.